Welcome to Partnering with Procurement. In this session, we will briefly touch on some high-level topics to introduce members of the JMU community to the procurement processes at JMU, the underlying reasons for those processes, and the resources at your disposal when you have questions. Government procurement is a highly regulated field. We're typically spending other people's money, state or federal taxpayers, government or non-government sponsors, or tuition, student, and fee dollars. Regardless of the source of funds, the procurement regulations apply. Sponsored program procurements have the same requirements as other university procurement. If your sponsor has additional requirements, you'll need to make us aware. Our processes are based on the Code of Virginia, the governing rules, the Virginia Higher Education Manual, Governor's executive orders, and additional JMU internal policy that may or may not be procurement policy. For example, there are policies governed by IT, finance, facilities management, risk management, and HR that impact procurement procedures. There are also requirements, such as having equipment certified by a nationally recognized testing laboratory, for example, Underwriters Laboratory, that are imposed by other outside factors, like the state fire code. Our Level 3 procurement authority allows us some greater flexibility, but it does not allow us to do whatever we want. We still have procurement law and various policies to enforce. We are audited annually by the Auditors of Public Accounts, and they ensure we conduct procurements per law, policy, and with transparency. There are also procurement items within the university management standards that we have to ensure are achieved. New procurement legislation and governor executive orders require us to revise our processes and policies regularly. There is legislation in our Level 3 management agreement that requires us to have all purchase orders flow through the Commonwealth's e-procurement system, EVA. We are also required to utilize EVA self-registered vendors for at least 75% of our purchases, and we must end each fiscal year within 15% of our overall SWAM goal, which is normally a goal of 42%. The goals can change with new legislation. EVA is our electronic procurement system, and entering purchase orders into EVA is required for purchases. This ensures the Commonwealth and the university have transparency. Everyone should always work to source from EVA self-registered vendors, or get new vendors to self-register before use. EVA charges JMU and the vendors a transaction fee for each order placed. The transaction fee to the university for self-registered vendors is lower than the transaction fee for non-registered or state-entered vendors because we have to pay the fees for both the vendor and the university in those cases. The university centrally pays the fees for E&G and auxiliary departments, but capital and sponsor program departments are charged back for their transactions. Ordering from self-registered vendors helps to keep fees lower. The Commonwealth of Virginia has goals for the use of certified small, women-owned, and minority-owned vendors. The university is required to annually submit a SWAM plan that establishes our institution's goal. For expenditures to be counted towards our goal, the firms we utilize must be certified with the Virginia Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. If you are planning to utilize a business and you have reason to believe they may be a small, woman, or minority-owned business, please request them to attempt certification. They can be forwarded to Procurement Services for information. Departments are strongly encouraged to use existing JMU-approved contract vendors first. Always consider SWAM vendors on contract. If there is no contracted vendor for a good or service, the department must then seek to utilize a certified micro-small business, followed by a certified small, woman-owned, or minority-owned firm. If no SWAM firm is available, files must include justification as to why the SWAM firm was not suitable. The university is audited annually by the State Auditor of Public Accounts to ensure that procurement processes have been followed per law and policy. Not following the correct procedures could create audit findings and the need to create more compliance-based activities and follow-up for all of campus. We are also subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Most of our records are open for public review. In procurement, it's important for us to have transparency. Your department's procurement documentation and justifications can be requested for public and media review. Procurement processes should be fair and transparent. Avoid any action related to a JMU procurement that will impact you or your immediate family's personal finances. There are laws and penalties in place around the receipt of personal gifts and conflicts of interest. Avoid actions that directly affect your personal finances, involve your immediate family, and items that you would not want to explain in public. Policy 1106 directly states that your contract of employment is the only contract you should have with the university. Departments in good standing with procurement policy are afforded a $10,000 delegation. Issues could result in the Director of Procurement Services suspending or terminating that delegation. Departmental delegation means you can make most purchases without extra layers of approval from procurement services. Your purchases must still follow all applicable law and university policy procedure. Procurement Services regularly sends out communications to update individuals with EVA access on new policies, procedures, vendors, and more. Your departmental EVA user should be able to assist you with normal procurement expectations. We have a great deal of information for departments on our Procurement Services website. Departments submitting orders to both EVA self-registered and certified SWAM firms are processed swiftly without needing to seek additional competition up to $50,000. The purchase order does need to come through us for review and approval prior to any work commencing, but using these types of firms supports the university goals and typically allows for the process to move along more expeditiously. Purchases above the department's $10,000 delegation must involve procurement services ahead of any purchase, and we will need to approve all purchase orders prior to any work commencing. If the good or service is not already covered by an existing term contract, we may need to seek competition. A formal procurement process takes time and needs to be worked into our schedule with consideration of other projects already in the queue. The amount of time can range from a few weeks to over a year depending on the complexity of the project and the willingness of the selected firms to agree to the Commonwealth of Virginia and JMU terms and conditions. For purchases over your delegation, it's important to give procurement services an early notice. We don't want you to spend months vetting a vendor for a project only to have to issue an RFP for open competition, or to find out we already have a firm under contract for the goods and services you'll need to utilize. Procurement facilitates the process for a purchase. If an RFP needs to be issued, procurement does not select the vendor. The stakeholders selected for the evaluation committee do that. If an IFB needs to be issued, the lowest cost vendor is awarded. University Policy 4100 governs the signature authority to sign contracts and agreements. For the purchase of goods and services, Procurement Services has that authority. Faculty and staff shall send items related to the purchase of goods and services to Procurement Services for review and signature. Covered on this slide are the current mandatory sources at JMU, but these can change. Top 10 do. Communicate, ask, contact. Involve procurement services as early as possible, plan ahead, and remember processing times can vary. Understand your needs and requirements and share any information you have with procurement services. Know where your funding will come from. Ensure funding is secured before advancing too far in the process. Understand the university has goals related to the use of EVA self-registered and SWAM vendors that are imposed by legislation or executive order. Use resources such as Procurement's website, Departmental Buyer's Guide, our Sourcing Guide, Equipment Considerations Checklist, Ask EVA at jmu.edu, Buyers in the Procurement Office, and the admins and fiscal techs in your office. Be patient. Procurements can take anywhere from a few days to several months. Consider that multiple departments may need to be involved. For example, IT, FM, procurement, finance. You may need to submit work request, technology solution request, business activity request, and send finance vendor W-9 forms, etc. Get involved. Tell procurement about goods and services you need under contract. Be available for evaluation committees, and tell us when contracts aren't working so that we can explore the issues and options. Remember, procurement services wants you to have the goods and services you want. We just need to get them by following the applicable laws and policies. Top 10 don't. Sign agreements, licenses, or contracts per Signature Authority Policy 4100. Accept gifts, favors, or employment from vendors. Conflict of Interest Policy 1106. Have conversations with vendors during any solicitation process. Assume what the procurement process will be. Small dollar, sole source, RFP, etc. Use Amazon or Google searches with expectations of ordering from sources located. Split orders to avoid a procurement process. Commence any work with a vendor prior to the procurement process being complete through an appropriately approved purchase order. Wait to tell us if a sponsor has specific conditions we need to consider. Assume we're an expert in your field. We facilitate the procurement process, but we need you to help us with specifications and expectations of the good or service. Don't forget, Procurement Services wants to partner with you. The easiest way to get help is to reach out to our office via our departmental email or our main phone line. Do you feel like you'd like a deeper dive into procurement processes? Contact one of the members of Procurement Services Management Team to set up an individual appointment. If you have specific questions about the availability of a contract or want to talk about an upcoming good or services procurement, you can either contact the buyer in our office responsible for the commodity, available on our staff listing, or write to askeva@jmu.edu to be provided with the best resource for your need.